Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and we got some massive updates for War Within on the horizon, as it looks like future internal builds such as patch 11.2, season 3 content, and even 11.25 get some new internal updates. So nothing we can currently preview, but it looks like they have been working on those patches for quite a decent bit of time, which could mean season 3 could be massive in scope. Also, patch 11.17 finally got a release date, which is great. Not only because now we know when all the content of 11.17 will become accessible, but also it makes some room for us to start seeing new PTR updates for 11.2 and 11.25 specifically. So in the very near future, we might actually be seeing some Season 3 content on PTR very shortly, which is extremely exciting. For today's video, I really want to take a look at everything we know about patch 11.2 and Season 3 content of War Within so far. And while Blizzard doesn't give us like a proper PTR build for us to walk around and test on, we do have enough data mine content as well as some lore walking that leads us into what patch 11.2 is likely going to be all about. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for War Within expansion or even future patches like 11.2, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So we know that patch 11.2, as well as even 11.25, has already gotten, or had for a while now, internal testing build. This isn't a PTR realm like a public test realm, it's more of a private test realm just for the devs. But it looks like they've been working on both of those for quite some time now, and it looks like 11.2 has been on works for quite a decent bit. In fact, we even know that patch 12.0 build has been in the works for quite a while. That is literally the next expansion of Midnight. So they've been working on this thing and been getting a build internally for some time. And it almost feels like they're ahead of schedule. They're taking a look at patches like 11.15, which actually was full of content. It was just kind of staggered out. 11.17 doesn't feel nearly as full. I think mostly it's just missing class changes that a lot of players really wanted to see. Though as we are rounding towards the tail end of a new season, I highly doubt they'll be doing some massive reworks as well as introductions of brand new specs like they did back in Dragonflight with augmentation. So I think that was just kind of like a fluke for Dragonflight specifically. I don't think that is meant to set a standard for what they're going to be doing class change wise in the future, but no crazy revamps for 11.17, which I think got some players bumped. Though hopefully we'll see more of that stuff in 11.2. Now, out of everything we know so far of 11.2, we actually know quite a decent bit of what this patch is going to have based on WoW's 2025 roadmap, which doesn't necessarily detail a lot of things. However, some of the things found within patch 11.17, they are potentially going to be some really cool, likely ethereal-based changes. One of them being from the Infiltrator Shroud trait. You'll notice that the actual ethereal models have changed quite a decent bit. You can even just compare Locust Walker as well as this ethereal model. It is completely different. The thing is too, they didn't really change ethereals anywhere else. No dungeons, no open world quests, no nothing. Only from the toy of the Infiltrator Shroud did ethereals get a brand new model. This will be our very first clue as to what patch 11.2 could potentially be about, likely relating to ethereals as a returning NPCs, traders, enemies, some players assuming maybe even a playable option, though the models were now not really fully finished with some of the animations. They definitely did get a nice upgrade that makes them look highly detailed, and sometimes when they add a lot of detail to a brand new race, sometimes it becomes playable at some point in the future, only time will tell. But the roadmap itself, back to the roadmap, we do know there's going to be new world events, so likely some sort of invasions or some sort of new world events within a brand new zone of patch 11.2. New dungeon, so think content such as Operation Floodgate, which was actually well received by the end of its run. Aside of this, we also know we're getting a new raid, as well as seasonal upgrades, as well as PvP changes and gear, so all of those things are expected. However, the map also does feature new world challenges, so possibly hard content in the open world, as well as a little note there with a seasonal rewards refresh, whatever it may be. As for the patch 11.2, I think a lot of players are expecting this to be a big ethereal patch, which I think it could be anything else, honestly. We also have route lands potentially, with those routes that travel all the way up in Ashkahed that does kick you out, and there have been some data mine maps from way back in the day that do detail route lands as a zone, as well as there's a big crystal in Hollowfall, which potentially could be a zone of its own. I mean, the idea of it is it would be a massive crystal. A lot of players have been wondering if it would ever be able to travel inside of it and potentially have that as maybe be a zone for us to go for a next patch update. But we also had ethereal raid data mined a long time ago with a bunch of ethereal based items. So those were data mined around the same time we data mined a goblin raid, and goblin raid turned out to be liberation of Undermine. So if that information in that same data mining linked us to Undermine, it potentially could link us to an ethereal focused raid, possibly on the home planet of Karesh. I guess also we shouldn't forget the liberation of Undermine and cutscene, with literally an ethereal holding the Dark Heart, standing on the precipice of what looks like their destroyed home world, just consumed by Void completely. So it makes sense for us to potentially chase after this ethereal, because the Dark Heart as a relic is kind of important in the current lore. Also, speaking of lore, Patch 11.17 is introducing a new feature of lore walking, and from here I am going to do a pretty big spoiler for one of those lore walking questlines. So if you're not a big fan of this being spoiled, now might be a good idea to give the video a like and then go watch something else. As a lore walking is actually kind of exciting content that really allows you to play through WoW's lore, where normally you have to read books or watch cutscenes or keep up with every expansion. But if you just want to catch up on some lore, it actually does it in a very awesome bite-sized way and gives you fun rewards like toys as well as a couple of different cosmetics for you to obtain. But if you're fine with spoilers as to how the lore walking likely leads into 11.2 being an ethereal patch, it's actually really cool what they've done with it. Lore walking right now has a couple of different stories. One on Arthas, how he turned to Lich King, which is pretty standard. One on the backgrounds of Xal'atath, which I don't really want to spoil too much, but she is the harbinger of a Void Lord that's very related to the third storyline that is focused on Ethereals. Ethereals themselves are a very enigmatic people, not really known about them, but we do know that they're broken up into multiple cartels after their homeworld was destroyed. There's the Consortium, which are essentially vendors and traders. These are the type of Ethereals we get to interact with in a majority of ways as vendors. Then we have the Ethereum, which are more radicalized militant group, often the bad guys, driven to destroy the Void as well as everybody else in their way to avenge the homeworld, as well as Protectorate, who attempt to thwart the Void, but also protect others against the Ethereum. Usually are the good guys, or at least non-officially bad guys, or not hostile to the player character in most cases. As well as another faction of the Ethereals called a Shadow Guard, which have tapped into the Void energies in order to try to see if they can harness them. Many people believe that they're probably related to Ethereum, but most of the ones that do touch into the shadows do end up falling for the call of the Void. The only one that doesn't really do that is Locust Walker, who is part of the Shadow Guard, utilizing the Void in order to power himself up, though many of the Shadow Guard just are not really able to, and are essentially servants of the Void. However, it seems that there's actually a lot more Ethereals in the world than we know outside of these main cartels or these main factions. Part of the lore walk actually explores a connection between the Ethereals and links them to the brokers of Shadowlands. And when you take a look at them, they actually are very similar in terms of both are built off of energy and embodies either clothing or armor, very similar to how Ethereals embody bandages. And very similar to the Ethereals, brokers have many different cartels, a lot more of them outside of just Ethereum Protectorate as well as Consortium. The lore walking questline also continues with us doing a small favor for an old friend, Venari, also another broker that's hiding out in the Maw, a good friend that actually helped us get established in the initially inhospitable zone way back in Shadowlands. But it turns out that as you do the questline, Locust Walker and Venari actually know each other, and there's even a voice line where it links them to potentially have arrived from the same world, home world of Karesh. So it seems the brokers and Ethereals might actually be one and the same, though using the armor as well as bandages and embodying their energies differently. Part of the World Soul Saga, as the whole saga for 3 expansions, is to find all the different little lore bits that multiple expansions have created and find a way to wrap them together in a nice little bow. So it's interesting that they're putting brokers and the Ethereals as like one and the same. Both of them are Kareshi, they're from the world of Karesh. Why do brokers split off and go to Shadowlands? How do they even travel to the realm of Afterlife? It's just a thing they can do anytime they want to. Why did the Ethereals decide to splinter off and continue the fight on the world against the Void? And how are the two characters of Venari as well as Locust Walker are potentially going to be integral in us going back to Karesh at some point, chasing after the Ethereal with a Dark Heart? I think there's enough cool lore stuff for players to get interested in, but then from there you can kind of build off from there. If, let's say, we were to go to Koresh as a new zone for us to explore, how would we be able to explore it? Would it be very similar to like this broken apart islands like we had in Argus, which were really, really cool? What type of environment would we have? Or better yet, what type of enemies we'd be able to fight, or collectibles we'd be able to earn. Just think of how many players will be excited to earn like ethereal-based transmog and items and weapons and mounts that are very ethereal focused, very void, very purple. I think there's a lot of potential there that could get a lot of players excited. All in all, I think all signs point to patch 11.2 being an ethereal themed patch. However, that is not confirmed by any measure. It is something that we'll see and know more about once 11.15 comes out, which is actually arriving very, very soon. And once that arrives, we'll get a lot more information about 11.2. But for now, this is everything that we have so far, at least regarding 11.2. The breadcrumbs, ethereals, lore walking, and everything we know so far from data mining and all the other information. And I cannot wait to see more updates regarding 11.2, and cannot wait to be back here making another update on future patches like those in the future. But with that, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any future updates like 11.2, especially when it comes out to PTR. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of discussions over in the community. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.